Hello and welcome to Watchworthy. I'm your host, Miss Chris D.
And it's your boy, Brother Ash.
And today we're discussing the docu-series, The Synanon Fix. Did the cure become a cult? Red flag already, because why are the documentary titles so long? They could have just called it The Synanon Fix, but whatever. You can find this on HBO. It came out in 2024, so it's pretty brand new. And it's coming out episodically on Mondays at 9 p.m. So we only watched episode 1, but feel free to watch. I think they already have 3 episodes by now, so feel free to watch all 3 to get the full story. But we're just going to be telling you about the origins of Synanon. And it features, recovered addicts who went through the Synanon program in the 60s and 70s. And the name Synanon itself, they said in the documentary, came from someone slurring the words together, symposium and Synanon, or anonymous and seminar. So It's kind of a made up name, but Synanon, you'll come to learn from this documentary that, it really became popular during this time. And it kind of started out with good intentions, but it ended up becoming a cult, apparently. So that's why I chose this documentary. I feel like I've heard the name before without even knowing much about it. Probably because I'm a true crime fan, but...
I also feel like they might have mentioned Synanon on another documentary that we watched. That talked about the origin of these kind of places where you go. Like, we was watching...
the program,
the academy in the program, like they kind of went on the lineage of cults in America, and I think they might have mentioned Synanon in one of them. So
yeah, I think I remember that. Well, this docuseries is definitely gonna have you mixed up because there's just a lot going on. And I'm gonna let Brother Ash kick us off and take it away.
All right, so boom, we're gonna start off like in the late 50s, out in LA. This is around the time where like heroin is the main drug. This is the gateway drug that people don't want weed to get you to, you know what I mean? Like, this is the worst drug at the time. So at that time, there was no residential programs for addicts. So like, a lot of times you got halfway houses today, all different type of nonprofit organizations that habilitate addicts and homeless people that are addicted to drugs or whatever the case may be. They don't even gotta be homeless. But that wasn't the thing yet. This is back in the 50s. So like, if you're a drug addict, it's just like, shame on you. You're a social pariah. It's like that now, but it was even worse back then.
Like, I'm glad you said social pariah because it really was like, oh my God, you're a drug addict. Like nowadays, it kind of has become normalized. I hate to say it, but
it's become normalized. One, because you realize there are celebrities and people who hold a lot of leverage in this country that have been addicted to drugs.
People on Wall Street snort coke or whatever.
And now, like, the secret is out now. Like, it ain't the 50s, and we necessarily got to believe everything they tell us. So drug addiction was very shameful. Chuck Dedrick, am I saying his name right?
Yeah, I think Dedrick. I don't know.
Chuck Dedrick, the founder of Synanon, was a man with a mildly deformed face. I forget what type of deformity he had.
Oh, I think they say he got meningitis or something. And it gave him the droopy face.
So he had like, he was a different looking guy. So it kind of like made him an outcast himself. He wasn't like the most popular person apparently. Chuck had cleaned up. He actually was addicted to alcohol. So he cleaned up his act through AA. He wanted to start Synanon to help drug addicts the way AA helped him. So it seems like at first when you're watching this, you kind of start wondering like, all right, so where does it go wrong? Because like, obviously we know it has to go wrong somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So boom. All right. So he launched the group therapy in a storefront.
Humble beginnings.
Humble, right? So newcomers would spend days, weeks, or however long it took on the couch in the storefront to kick their habit. And it's kind of like a safe place because it was unlike any other treatment because it was like fellow junkies helping each other.
Yeah.
Not like a bunch of doctors, people with degrees telling you why you should stop, using drugs.
Because back then, people didn't realize, like, it's literally an addiction. If I could stop, I would, but I can't. And so it took other drug addicts to understand drug addicts.
So off the rip, you're kind of already finding community, though, which I thought was pretty cool.
I liked what they were doing at first. I hate to say that, but it's like at first, okay.
I like what they was doing up first to an extent.
Only that part. Yeah.
Let's not give them too much credit.
But even kicking your habit on a couch in the living room in front of everybody is kind of degrading.
That's kind of extreme too, because like it's kind of like not. It was the beginning of this, so there's no right way to do it. So if the guy says this is what it is, then this is his program.
Yeah.
And if you want to come and kick it on this couch, this is what it is. So the rules were simple. Is the only rules was no violence and no drugs. Surprise, surprise.
They should have had a couple more rules, I guess.
Yeah. So part of the treatment, and this is the part that I said the treatment was cool and innovative and fun.
This is the first
to
red
an
flag.
extent.
Yeah.
The first red
or the
flag.
Second.
I'll wait until I say it to make the noise. Something called the game. All right, red flag to the game. Okay. The game was you could raise your voice and fight with people verbally. And in the game, you just let your anger out. You said whatever was on your mind. So if your stepdad used to beat your ass and you said my stepdad used to beat my ass, somebody in the room in the game could say, hey, you fucking drug addict, and that's why your stepdad used to beat your fucking ass, you piece of shit.
And you can't, no violence, right? You can't punch
No
them.
violence.
You can't, but you could talk back. You could be like, well, you lousy piece of shit. You left your family and children for drugs and alcohol.
So it's kind of like you don't really know, what you want to, like, I guess fix at one point because you're so focused on just like rage.
Yeah.
That maybe that's, the expression you need to kind of fill in.
It's cathartic.
For the need to like, do drugs or whatever. So, yeah. So moving on with the game, it was very scary. Some people loved it. Some people used it, like I said, like a tool to kind of, let anger out, blow off some steam. The game helped people change because it did hold them accountable. So, like, if you came in and you had a plan, like, hey, I want to stop using today and blase, and let's say the next week you come in and you still, you just ended up using it again. People are going to say something to you. So, it's going to hold you accountable. And that goes back to the community that I said that you're provided by being in Synanon. So, it's good because you're being held accountable, but it's like, is this truly healthy when it comes to me rehabilitating?
That's why I'm saying red flag, because I just feel like you started with good intentions. You definitely, these people said that they have been taken to jail for their addiction. They have been taken to psych wards for their addiction. None of that stuff helped. I would not want to go to a psych ward in the 50s. They were still doing the shocking people's brains, shock therapy.
They
still do that today.
Low key.
So that's why I'm just like, yes, I would rather some people in the community who are also on drugs screaming at me to help me get off my addiction. Maybe. This is why I can see how people get sucked into this, because like you said, it's that community. We don't have nowhere else to go. People don't like us in the community.
Yeah, so couples like Jack and Terry Hurst, they found Synanon. It really worked, and it saved their family. So here's the thing about Synanon. It kind of works. Like, there's people that's coming in, like, saying that, like, yo, like, I got clean, and it's because of this program.
It was word of mouth for sure.
Yeah, so it was a lot of word of mouth, but there was a level of results being proven. So, like that couple I just mentioned. So, yeah.
And so, I think that Jack and Terry, I think Terry was in the documentary. She was basically just saying, like, even though people still have mixed feelings about it, people who got out of it. There was a black lady in the documentary who also was like, I would not be here today without Synanon. Like, yeah, it turned into a cult, but it did get me off drugs. Yeah. So, very interesting. So Synanon grew out of that storefront, and Chuck got a building, an armory in Santa Monica. And it was very expensive. We leveled up now, y'all. We got 60 people in our group now, so let's get a bigger space. And they had to pay for this somehow. And so he actually decided to incorporate it as a business. So now, I guess a little bit of a red flag. Now it's going from just a community program to communal living. And hey guys, if we're all going to be roommates, we have bills.
Yeah.
And so, of course, he made himself the executive, but he actually had no business experience. He only had a little bit of training from his time at Gulf Oil. So again, red flag, like, what makes you... He just became like the guru because he started the John.
That's America, though. This is the land of opportunity, in a sense where once you acquire the leverage to like purchase a business or, or create your own business, you have the idea and you get the backing and you get the people involved to pay for it. That's all you need to validate yourself as a legit. Experience. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but now, he ended up having more experience than other people. So.
Yeah. So with that, Synanon was still free to addicts and their group did grow to about 60 people, but you have to feed all these people.
Yeah.
So he decided to start hustling, basically like getting donations, acting like a nonprofit, so to speak, because of people started to change and they were like, oh, Synanon's really doing something over there. I don't mind donating food or clothing or whatever. They said they was getting cattle and cotton and all types of stuff, kind of donations. So they never went hungry. Like, they was always getting donations because people had a soft spot for helping drug addicts. And so eventually Synanon grew to have its own gas stations, apartments. He was picking up real estate quickly. Like, it was catching on. And again, this is all in California at the time. And so, like you said, probably Hollywood, probably people on drugs. So the program was supposed to be a year or two long. And again, red flag, there's no rules to this thing. Like, he's making it up as he goes along. Yeah. So somebody was like, hey, I've been here for a year. Am I good to go? And he was like, no, actually, it's a lifetime program.
What? Red flag. A lifetime program? That sounds like jail, nigga.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about?
The problem was everybody who left Synanon came back a dope fiend. So it didn't really work. That was the question. Like, you did this and you were safe here, but when you went out into the real world, you got tested and you came back on drugs. So now you got it. So basically people who were in the program felt like if you leave, you're going to die out there.
Yeah. So it's not really like rehabilitating. It's more so
just stay here.
Just cold turkey lockdown.
Yeah.
And like, it's not really teaching you how to say no on the outside. Though.
Yeah, you know and all the while you're still having that. They said they was having the game like every night, like they was
that shit
just
was
a bunch of people yelling at each other.
And you gotta think, man, there's certain people who just built for that. Like,
yeah. So as soon as the program became a lifelong thing, the black lady was like, "Dang!" Once I realized I wasn't gonna be able to make it out in the real world, I said, "Mama, send my kids here." Red flag. Like, now you're gonna have your kids come live with you in rehab, basically.
Yeah.
Messing up their life, changing their life. So they had communal living, which again, I like some of the aspects of what they were trying to do. Like, you know, the one boy said you had like, this is Timmy's mom, but we all knew Timmy's mom looked out for us. And like, we don't have that these days where it really takes a village, like a community.
Yeah, but I also don't want to have to live
in
like,
a rehab,
in a fucking, basically a compound. Like, to get that. Like, I should be able to open my door and say hello to Timmy's mom across the street.
Right, you're right. His mom should be able to leave Synanon and feel confident that she can make it without drugs.
Yeah, and that's where it got fucked up because the one black lady that was there was on drugs and her mom was watching her kids and her mom was like, yo, girl, like, come home. Like,
girl, how much longer you gonna get that Synanon, girl?
Because like they was kind of living nice. They had like a nice little place.
They lived in a big ass armory on the beach. It was on the beach.
Like, so the grandma probably like, wait, you sending me back pictures of you on this fucking beach? Come get these fucking kids. But she like, I can't leave yet. So then he like, bring them here.
Yeah. So when the kids started coming in, we found out that the kids even had to participate in the game. Started at the age of 12. Red flag.
Yeah, red flag.
That really upset me because I'm looking at this. I'm like, as an adult, I can't stand people calling out my insecurities and my worst issues and shitting on my circumstances. Like, I would probably be crying if I was in the game. So imagine a kid doing that.
They showed
the clip of the little kid.
Of the little kids yelling at each other. And it was kind of funny until you realize how traumatic that shit is.
Yeah, that one girl started crying.
Like the one little girl was just in there going off. I'm like, this badass little kid, she don't shut the hell up.
No, yeah, some kids were built for it. Some were like, you stupid dickhead, I've been waiting to call you out.
Word, like.
That was crazy. But young kids, so the black lady that we were talking about in the documentary, her son, he's like in his 40s now, and he was like, yes, or maybe, no, he's got to be older than that, 50s or 60s. Because this is all still happening in the 60s, mind you. So he was like, yeah, you could tell that children were just not the first thing on their mind at the Synanon. Like, they didn't even think about what we gonna do with these kids while we were here. And the kids, basically, even adults, they said in the documentary, you never knew where the game was gonna go. You kind of just had to learn the rules as you go.
Yeah.
And they just said, like, it's moving the goalpost for kids. If you're putting kids in this position, they had a hard time adjusting to the rules. They just didn't understand it.
You also gotta, like, put into perspective, like, some people that's not as confrontational kind of learn how to play the game in a way where you understand how to be in that room and not end up getting yelled at. Because you don't really stir up pots or say shit. You just kind of like keep a certain profile. So yeah, you learn how to survive because that shit was it was a battlefield. It was a verbal battlefield.
So when you think about it, why did that even have to be an aspect of the therapy, man?
I think it was because maybe that's something that old buddy picked up in AA.
Yeah.
Some type of different version of that, and he just tried to implement it into this.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It became something drugs.
But we seeing that with Ivy Ridge. Like they use that type of criticism and degradation of character on people to kind of make them want to be more self-aware or whatever. So it's something about this that we see in cults where it's like it's a way to try to control people and try to get people to like stay.
It is because now these people know like you're a piece of shit drug addict who lost her 3 kids. Like, I'm sorry.
But imagine saying that to somebody after they come to you like, yo, I'm a piece of shit drug addict and I lost my 3 kids. I want to get my life together. Like,
people are just spreading your secrets in this. It's supposed to be a safe space. Like you said, that's the weird part about a cult. It's like, I love you guys like family, but you also treat me like crap.
You use my shit against me.
Yeah, so it's a very weird dynamic.
Are safe with me.
I won't tell. Okay. We gotta do more singing on this podcast. Okay, so the Armory, like we said, it was beachfront. It was a nice big area. The kids, the black guy said in the documentary, like, it was like heaven. So at the time, as a kid, he thought this was normal. He thought it was cool.
Live on the beach.
Yeah, with a bunch of 60 other people. I don't know.
This is back in the 60s too. Black people weren't supposed to be on that beach.
Right.
Like and if we were just barely supposed to be on that beach. Like.
That's exactly what we're about to get into because they really shocked me on the first episode of this docuseries when they were like, oh yeah, in 1963, Chuck Dedrick, the guy who started all this, he married a black woman named Betty Coleman.
Red flag. And only because she just wasn't any black woman, she was a part of the fucking program. Oh
yeah, definitely. Want to highlight how she was also a recovering addict. So the other black woman, so there was at least 2 black women in this cult. At the time it wasn't a cult, but you know, the other black woman we were talking about, she was like, me and Betty, we were super close, and then she just kind of got up under Chuck, and you know, that was her position. She was like the first lady of Synanon, basically. And so Santa Monica at this time is super white, as you mentioned, Brother Ash, and interracial couples are rare at the time.
Yeah.
It's 1963. It's like the heat of the civil rights era. And so the city, again, this reminds me of the last documentary where it's like the city finally caught on. They were like, oh, y'all can't be doing this.
Yeah.
So the city is like, how dare this white man bring interracial communal living at that? Like, literally. We all have our own cookie cutter homes and y'all want to start a big compound? Yeah. He's like, how dare y'all bring this to the beach? So that's where the city started to get a little intense.
So they started to get a lot of heat from the city because they didn't want drug addicts, one, in their neighborhood and then like living differently than what they thought was normal.
Right.
So Chuck actually went to jail for a zoning violation, which was like rare.
Red flag because we all just want to catch him on anything.
Man, fuck that. I was kind of happy to see a white man get a zoning violation. Like,
but then
that sounds like some shit that you stick like a black business with, like back in the day. Like,
you're right.
We're gonna try to shut you guys down, but y'all doing everything right, so we can't. Fuck it, zoning violation.
Yeah, you're right.
So like, it kind of like it's fucked up that once you become like this type of person, you kind of, I guess, lose some of your white privilege. But I guess for me, this was me seeing a white guy lose some of his white privilege. So
yeah, and we know that he really wasn't a great guy. So for him to go to jail, no harm, no foul.
Word. It is stick. You know. So Betty was a respected leader, and she held down the fort. Shout
out to that black woman. I had no idea a black woman was involved in this.
Yeah. It threw me off, especially back then in the 60s, because old heads try to make it seem like the young generation is the only one that get caught up with bullshit and fall for it.
We the only ones popping Molly and taking drugs. No. Y'all was doing heroin.
Been popping Mollies and sweating. Fuck is you talking about?
James Brown.
Chill.
That's the first person I think of.
You ever see the fuck it. Who is it? I think it's it's like Thompson? Rick James or something. He's like playing the piano, like just sweating fucking bullets. And I'm like, yo,
that's the first thing you think of.
Yo. So everyone in Synanon started to grow closer. It really started to become more of a family environment. They hosted Saturday night open house parties for the community this was probably an effort to try to get the community off their back. Like, all
Right.
right, we're going to stop complaining because y'all did have that really fun event last weekend.
Right.
So they threw little parties and stuff so people can learn about Synanon. And then even celebrities started to come through because, you know, they close to L.A., Hollywood.
And the
a lot
name
of
is
that
getting
shit.
bigger. People are like, what's that Synanon thing going on over there?
Word. So they kind of flipped the publicity of being like, who are these people to like, oh, this is what they are and this is what they're doing. They flipped it. So Synanon started getting like presidential nods.
That surprised me. Red flag, red. You know the government always involved.
Because but they're cleaning up communities low key. At least it seems that way. Like you take a drug addict that you would see under the bridge yelling at people, you put him in Synanon, and now you don't have to see him under the bridge no more.
But you're never going to see him under the bridge again because he's stuck at the compound. He can't leave.
So it's kind of like...
Mind you, babe, they had their own Synanon gas stations. They had their own jobs. Like, they didn't need to ever go nowhere.
Yeah. So they had a catchy motto in Synanon that was called Hang Tough.
Don't you feel like you've heard that before? Like,
Definitely. People say that all the time. And Chuck is known to have coined the phrase that we use today that says, today is the first day of the rest of your life. That's something that like you hear in all like...
Right, that's groundbreaking.
All like rehab environments where you try to get right or change your life. Today's the first day of the rest of your life.
That's like the quote they put on the poster with a picture of a mountain. Like,
even that you get saved at church, they might say that to you.
Yeah.
So there was even a movie about Synanon.
This surprised me.
This was crazy. And
I would say red flag, but it's pretty cool.
word.
So.
They had a movie in 1965 and it starred Eartha Kitt as Betty Coleman.
Played Betty.
She was Chuck's wife. And I'm like, yo, we watching the documentary. I'm like, wait, is that Eartha Kitt? Like, how big did this shit get? Like, and I don't, before we started doing like this documentary, I can't really say I've heard of this before.
Yeah, I definitely have not.
Synanon and shit, like I don't really.
I knew the name, but I didn't really know that it was this popular.
It sounds too much like Synonym, so I probably would have just like, it would have just flew right through my brain.
And that's even telling. That's a red flag to me that the name was just made up. Like I just.
Yeah, it doesn't even mean nothing. Like
this program didn't mean anything to him.
Synanon could have at least been like Swahili for peace or something.
Right, he was milking people for their cattle and cotton and everything else he could get his hands on.
Shit's not even
That's
a real
where
world.
the greed comes in. You started it for good intentions, but now you're flipping off the police, living in a mansion, like.
So they even had like they were like a part of pop culture. They had their own dance called the hoopla.
Yeah.
Like the fucking drug addict place had a dance that people
made
did.
their like we got the Soulja Boy. Like their generation had the hoopla.
Do the hoopla and say no to drugs.
Right.
Synanon spread and had multiple locations across the country. So now
big.
it's not just in California. It sounds like something my grandma would have sent money to. Synanon spread, and they had multiple places across the country, like I just said. At the time, though, there was a small awakening of mental health going on around America. So
red flag, because how come I never knew about that? I didn't realize that. It was more so people in the 60s studying brains. Like, what's the show? Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yeah.
It was probably more so like that.
Stuff like, I would feel maybe more science, but also, you know, veterans coming back and not being mentally stable, maybe shed light on some things.
Right.
So yeah, professors and psychologists started studying Synanon and the game because they want
scary.
A closer understanding of what about this works in this program and in this setting. Like, what is it about this that makes it unique to, you know, getting somebody off of a drug?
Well, that's scary to me because psychologists, like, people really respected it. But if you really zoom out, it's just people yelling at each other in the room.
That's really all it is.
And I don't think that's safe. I wonder what those studies found. I'm sure they get into it in episodes 2, 3. Mind you, we're just recapping episode 1 here. But folks started integrating the game everywhere. Like in different organizations and church groups. And like people started to do the game even if you're not in Synanon, which I don't like that. Red flag. Like, red flag. What if your friends are like, hey, let's just have a night where we all just scream the worst things at each other? Actually, I did see that. I saw a TikTok. Did you see that TikTok where the boy was going back and forth with his friend and he was like, it's the not finishing school for me. I'm like, damn, that's harsh.
Damn.
I couldn't do that. Y'all
Yeah,
kids today, y'all got too many little games on TikTok.
Weird.
But apparently they had games back in the 60s too. So people started integrating this everywhere. And Synanon was just like another part of all the other social movements that were going on at the time. We just talked about people were protesting the war, civil rights, all this stuff happening in the 60s. It was the perfect storm and the perfect timing for something like this to happen. Again, just, man, people just catching on a wave, I guess. He just knew, like, that's why I said I did appreciate what he started with, because he was like, oh, I see drug addicts coming back from the war. Maybe I should help these people. You know, like, he had the foresight to see that, but it just went to his head, man. It just went bad. So in 1968, Synanon moved to a bigger mansion, and it was a really great community for a lot of people. So they're just growing and growing. It's 1968 by now, and even people who weren't drug addicts were joining. Red flag.
Yeah, red flag.
So now you just want to join a group of recovering addicts just to say that you belong to something, just so you can be a part of Synanon.
We ain't about to deny that donation that you just made. So hell yeah, you can be a part of Synanon.
Yeah, especially they said in the documentary at this time people were also, you know, emotionally distraught after the assassinations of JFK and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
So people were just trying to get involved in a cause. And they called themselves lifestylers, the non-drug addicts who would join. And like you said, they would donate their salaries to Synanon. And of course, giving their time. You might be a doctor on the outside world, but when you come to Synanon, you're doing something else. Like, crazy that people were